one of my colleagues at a former organization, I love this quote. He said, "Win before Google." This is what this is letting you do, where like they don't even need to go to Google before this. They know, like, I'm going to go to Ryan anytime I need help with these type of recruiting.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Cruit Group podcast. Ryan Levy here with another special guest, Mr. Sam Keenley, VP of Marketing at Loxo and host of one of my favorite podcasts known as Become a Hiring Machine. How you doing, Sam? Welcome.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that you actually listen to it. That makes my podcast host heart happy.
Yeah, I love that you guys have like these quick hitter episodes. I find myself frequently sharing them with my team. So even if you guys are not Loxo users or customers and you're a recruiter out there, I highly recommend you check out the podcast. There's tons of awesome information on there.
Perfect. Appreciate that. And that's the exact point right there, right? Is that, sorry, you might hear, we've got a almost 12-month-old in the other room. You might hear a couple little squeaks from her. She's about to go for a walk. But I mean, that's the point, is like, no one wants to listen to a podcast where you just get pitched all day, right? It's like, right. I want to do something to learn, to hear something cool. So it's like, that's the whole purpose. We get to work with recruiters all day, every day. So why wouldn't we want to tell those stories?
Yes, absolutely. Before we dive into some of the good stuff, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I mentioned you're VP of Marketing for Loxo now. But how did you get to where you are today? You started, as I understand it, you started actually on the sales side of software sales and then moved into marketing. But tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. All right. Let's try not to do the boring version of it. So I'll go even a step before that first job. I grew up in a family. We've owned an advertising agency for 3 generations, but very traditional ad agency, like print, radio, TV. And that was in Northwest Ohio. So 4th generation coming up, dad's like, "Hey, do you want the keys to the kingdom?" And the kingdom is like this tiny little like 5-person office, right? Yeah. But I'm just like, man, I don't know if I can stay in Northwest Ohio and keep doing all this, because I saw the change it was coming with just digital marketing, for lack of a better, broader term. And I'd spent my whole life in Ohio. I was like, let's go south. Let's go somewhere warm. Let's go to a beach that's not Lake Erie. So the sales side, enter that, was my first job was over at Blackbaud, which is this big enterprise nonprofit software company. And the role was the equivalent of today's like business development representative. And so me, fresh out of college, was just like, I just want a job. I want a job in somewhere cool, like Charleston, California, something like that. And so they said, "Hey, come on down for an interview." Did the interview, got the job. They're like, "Cool, but we're not going to pay you to move." I'm like, "You don't need to pay me. I'll hop in my minivan with my friend and come on down." And that was basically just the foot in the door. I was like, I just need a job so I can live in Charleston. At that point, I was so early in my career, I didn't have any big aspirations. I was like, I just want to be able to live to the weekend, go to happy hour in a cool place, and rinse and repeat, do it all over again. So yeah, that was the entry into the SaaS space, which who knew it would lead me down this beautiful rabbit hole. But yeah, started as a BDR, quickly learned while I was successful in sales, I did not enjoy that like new month, start all over again, rinse and repeat. I was like, all right, I do like the marketing side, having grown up in that.
Sure.
So from there, that's where I started going down the path of, okay, BDR into basically, it was called a lead specialist, which was where it was a glorified like lead handoff. So if someone comes in, they says, "I want to talk to sales." Okay, well, we're this big enterprise structure. What region are they? What specific vertical are they in? What other subset of like some criteria to figure out what rep should they be having a conversation with? But yeah, marketing operations, stayed there for about 8 years. And then that culminated with me leading the digital marketing team there. But we had this big $1 million budget. And I always had this inkling. I was like, we're running a lot of, it was like the very textbook, like ebook campaigns, webinar campaigns, all these lead generation opportunities that you'd hand off to sales. And you just like have this weird conversation every month where marketing hits their goals, but sales isn't hitting their pipeline or revenue goals. It's like, that shouldn't be happening. What's going on? And that was where it started to get into this whole, like, something we're doing isn't working if it's not translating into pipeline and revenue. And then that's what led me over to my next job, which was Refine Labs, which was this agency, which is basically like flipping that entire model on its head and rewriting the playbook for what is demand generation today, and like, how do people actually buy? And it's not through those ebooks, it's not through those webinars, but it's like building trust, building awareness, and just like speaking to your audience how they want to be spoken to.
How did you like working on the agency side? Was it rewarding for you to work with all sorts of different companies?
Yeah, I loved it. As someone who chronically gets bored, if I do the same thing over and over and over, like working with over my time, there were like 60 different SaaS companies, tons of brilliant marketers. There was no shortage of different scenarios, different problems to be solved for, different goals to be achieved. And then just how quickly the platforms changed during that time too. There was always something new to learn. So I loved it during my time there. Wouldn't have traded it for the world. I call it like, I consolidated what you would learn if you stayed in-house in 20 years into 2 years, 2.5
Sure.
years while there. So, yeah, I had an absolute blast, but we had a little one on the way, and I was like, I can't keep doing the agency lifestyle right now if I want to show up
Yeah.
for my family like I want to. So I was like, all right, it's time to go back in-house.
Did you get recruited to Loxo, or was this something you applied to?
Yeah, no, funny enough, Matt recruited me. So
Nice.
he used his own platform. I still remember it was like, because everyone gets those like the emails, the DMs, hey, think you'd be a great fit for this one. You're just kind of like, oh, another recruiter pitch. And then I got a text and it was from Matt. I was like, huh, that's weird. The CEO just texted me. So I replied back to it. Years later, I found out he was using Loxo Outreach to do it. And it was completely automated. So I was just like, Matt, come on, man. But yeah, he recruited me and it was like months after I just started Refine Lab. So I was like, I'd love to help, but like, I'm not ready to take on that role in-house yet. But like, you have something really cool here. Like, let's stay in touch. Everything else, I didn't hear from him for about another 12, 18 months. And then he came back around. They still hadn't made the hire. I was like, hey, come work with us at Refine Labs so we can kind of at least get you started. And I told him, I was like, my wife and I are, we want to start a family. I'm not going to be an agency for forever. So like, we can at least get you off the ground and then see where it goes from there.
Nice.
So yeah, long story short, Matt, walked the walk and used his own software to do the recruiting.
That's a pretty cool story. I'm curious, kind of like sidebar there. Does Matt come from the recruiting world? Is that how he started this company?
No, his background is not the recruiting world either, but he's very, very much a first principles learner. So he's just like, I've got to fully just jump in and see like, what's the recruiting process like, work with thousands of prospects, customers to figure that all out. But he's not a recruiter by trade until at least now.
Nice. Super interesting. So for those of you that don't know, Loxo is essentially a CRM, ATS, whatever you want to call it, right? We have been, well, I'll let you answer there before I dive in further on that.
Yeah. And
Did I describe that bad?
You didn't describe it bad. You describe it how every recruiter thinks of it, which is like, and this is exactly why I'm here, why Matt brought me on, because yeah, you just described this as like CRM, ATS. And the way I would describe it is we're a talent intelligence platform. And every recruiter's like, cool, Sam, way to come up with a new word. You're such a marketer. But here's the story of like what a talent intelligence platform is and why that is different from just an ATS and CRM. So when I joined Loxo, I needed to just like get my bearings again. I'm not a recruiter. I didn't come from this space. So I was just doing like market audit. What's going on? There are over 500 ATS platforms out there. There's over 125 different CRMs. There's God knows how many sourcing platforms, contact information finding tools. Like it's a very concentrated space, right? So saw that we have phenomenal win rates. So knowing that I came from Refine Labs before and had worked with, 60 different B2B companies, I've seen what's good, what's acceptable, what's bad, what's good, like not even good, like great, phenomenal win rates.
Sure.
And we were at the high end, the very high end of it. I was like, that's interesting. So we're in this very concentrated space, but we're winning really well, but we weren't, we were continuing to grow, but we weren't a market leader or anything else. So I'm like, okay, well, there's clearly something here. And so furthermore, I dug into it. I'm like, what's the takeaway of this? It's when people see Loxo, they choose us, they get it. But the marketplace is so crowded. We weren't on the initial list, so to speak, of when someone's like, I need a new ATS CRM. We're not showing up as best ATS platform, best CRM platform, because they don't know what to search, like talent intelligence platform. And so before I get into even defining like talent intelligence platform, like anything that we want to stop in with that part?
No, I mean, I'm curious to hear your definition of a talent intelligence platform. For me, I've worked with several different ATSs and even separate CRMs at some of the bigger companies. And when I first started Cruit Group, I was using Bullhorn solely because it was what I was used to after I left Kforce, a big publicly traded firm, and went to a smaller firm. They were using Bullhorn. And essentially, when I first started Cruit Group, I was using Bullhorn just as like a data dumper. I was putting my resumes in there, place to keep them, whatever. And I'm pretty active in the recruiter groups on Facebook, aging myself there. Yes, I still use Facebook, and basically put some feelers out there to see what smaller agencies or what agencies in general were using. And Loxo was one of the popular answers. And I did a demo. And as soon as I saw Loxo, the demo, and I'm not trying to blow smoke here, Sam, I was like, this is for me. And we've now been using it for 18 months or so. And I honestly don't think we'll ever go back. I don't even know how to describe it. It's smooth. It's intelligent, to use a word there. And what I love about you guys is you're constantly adding new features and iterating, which I think is super cool. It's not nearly the same product as it was 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So tip of the hat to you guys and the product development team.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And that's the whole point. So the consolidated, like, I don't even know, 10 words elevator pitch is like, our goal is to help companies recruit more intelligently and effectively. Well, shouldn't that be every recruiting software's goal? So like, broad statement, let's go down a level from here. There's the running joke that like HR tech is always 5-10 years behind marketing and sales tech. Recruiter typically has to use like 10 plus tools just to do their job, which that's kind of the opposite of like intelligent, effectively, efficiently. And so like we were saying earlier, it's like you've got an ATS, you've got a CRM, you've got a contact information finding tool like ZoomInfo or Lucia, you've got a sourcing tool like LinkedIn Recruiter, you've got an email outreach tool, you've got a reporting tool, you've probably got an SMS tool, like the list goes on and on and on. And they're all selling themselves was like, we integrate with all these other things to create this perfect ecosystem for you. But integration is a generous term, so to speak, because like they're bolted onto each other. You still have to do data imports, exports. And for anyone, I always said like, Matt, an all-in-one platform isn't really that compelling. Well, a month ago, our integrations with MarTech that I use broke. And I was missing critical data from one system to another. And it was so manual, so cumbersome. I was just like, okay, actually having everything all in one is more, until something doesn't like breaks on you, you don't understand just how valuable and helpful that is to you. So long story short, basically what we say is we take all of those and that's consolidated into one platform, a talent intelligence platform. So you have everything that you need in one single space. And so if we keep following this thread, that's where we realize that a lot of recruiters think like there's a spectrum that you get to choose from. You can have this really sophisticated platform that's probably going to be expensive, hard to use, or you can have something that's affordable, simple, intuitive. And we're like, you don't have to choose. Like you can meet in the middle of that. And that's exactly what our talent intelligence platform was designed for and solved for, is like marrying this ideal, simple workflow with all of the jobs to be done that you need to do as a recruiter in one place. So I'll kind of wrap up this little monologue on here before we get into the conversation. But you've made coffee with like a Keurig K cup or used solo cups before, right?
Of course.
Okay. So the analogy that I like to use is a lot of ATS and recruiting CRMs are like K cups, like solo cups. They're single use only. So what you do is you work a job. You talk to the candidates, you make your placement, and then that data just kind of goes into the abyss. It's locked in that job, and whatever part of your CRM is stored away for forever. The talent intelligence platform, on the other hand, though, it grows with you, it learns with you. And so what I mean by that is like from the job itself, it is taking into account things like the job title that you're working on, the hiring company and what uniquely makes them up, to the details of the job description, and all informs various parts of your recruiting workflow. So it's going to help you source candidates instead of just a list of here's 20,000 candidates who meet your match. It's going to rank them for you based on the hiring company, the parts of the job description that you've included in there. And it's going to serve it up. So the best candidate might not be on page 78, but the best candidate is on page 1 for you. So it does that more intuitively for you. It helps you craft like outreach messages. So we have, we call Outreach GPT. It's our own LLM, but it, again, takes details from that job description, from whatever you want. So again, I'm not condoning like use Chat GPT to write everything, but it gives you that starting point for you to then go in and tweak and build off of to make it better. So go ahead.
No, it's interesting you say that. I don't want to get too far off topic, but like I use ChatGPT all the time, and to me, I kind of use it to like kickstart my brain. I don't
exactly. That's how the best people do with it.
You know? Yeah.
It's the starting block. It's like why spin your wheels going from, if we're on a scale from like you want to go from 0 to 10, let that do the 0 to 7 work for you, and then you fine tune it and put your spin on it, your angle, what makes you great as a recruiter. You put that finish on the end of it, and that has just made you 3 to 5 times more efficient with just like working smarter. So all that to say, like we have different things like that where it's, it's making your day easier, more effective. And it just, as we say, it grows from you. And all this data is in your CRM. And most people just dump things into their CRM. I think there's some stat from Salesforce. It's like 90% of your CRM's out of date within 6 months.
Yeah.
We have an auto refreshing database. So if someone moves jobs, if someone gets a new phone number, if someone ups their job title or something else, this will refresh for you. So you can keep tabs on them. And it's not, again, starting from scratch every single time. But if you identified, Ryan Levy is a great candidate, we want to work with him someday. Instead of finding out that 4 years down the line, you've got something that's a great fit for him, you have no idea where he's at, what he's currently doing, if he'd still be of interest, you can keep tabs on him and have that ready for you.
I didn't even know that. I learned something new already today.
Learn something new every day. Yeah.
How do you guys continue to evolve on a weekly, monthly basis? I mean, do you guys just invest heavily in product development, or are you really out there, listening to the voice of the customer? Like, what's your philosophy on that? Because that's something to me that's the most impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our team ships daily. We've got a fun channel in Slack that's just called releases, and every day we get to see like what has the product team shipped in product. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's big, but there's always a handful of things going out. And I think it comes from a couple of different things. One is just as I said, Matt recruited me earlier. Matt and the team recruit for a very specific type of person that always wants to like grow, push boundaries, learn, isn't content with the status quo. And also the people that understand like change is constant. You need to be evolving, adapting, you're going to fall behind. So we would be lying if we said we're a talent intelligence platform and we're not being intelligent, we're not evolving. Like that's the whole purpose of it, is not being stagnant. So there's that element of just like the people that do the makeup behind it. And then we also we want to be the company that you associate with like innovation, with keeping recruiters at the cutting edge of what is going on, what can they do to be most effective in their role, and equipping them with that. So part of it is, yes, having conversations with customers. What do you want? What should we include? But the other part is like, it's that old Henry Ford quote, right? Like if you ask people what they want, they're going to say faster horses. So we also get to see what do we know of like our experience. Again, like Matt and I don't come from recruiting tech, but we can pull anecdotally from other industries. What are we seeing that will help people do better in their roles, and how can they apply that to what they do in their workflow, what we build within our software to incorporate that all in one spot. So I'd say, yeah, it's just like always wanting to innovate, not being okay with what's currently out there, and knowing that there's a better way. You just have to push and strive for that.
Sure. I'm curious. Do you guys work with large agencies as well? I honestly don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Everyone across the board. So I know that's the hard part, is everyone's like, oh, if your ATS isn't for, RPO, then it can't be for agencies, or if it's for exec search, it can't be for in-house. But what we did is the core product is the same product, but we then customize it. So you let us know, what type are you? I'm a small recruiting agency. I'm an executive search firm. I'm an in-house company. We then have different ways that we tailor that for you with how we construct the product. We have different variations of it so that it is built just for you and based on like what you need. So in-house companies, they don't have a need to do biz dev. So we have an entire like sales deals portion, a sales CRM platform, but we don't turn that on for them because they never need it, right? So there's different things where it's like we have all the core parts built, and then depending on what you need, that's where we basically kind of like configure the platform so it'll be exactly what you want.
Yeah, I love that. And definitely not my intention to turn this whole episode into a Loxo sales pitch, but I just am passionate about the product. And I think there's a lot of different takeaways for people that aren't using Loxo from this conversation that can learn something and hopefully implement something in their own way. But I think something else that's super cool. We recently upgraded to Loxo Source, and my team fully believes in it now, probably 2 months in. I think what I want to learn about is more the technology on the back end, because we're finding candidates that we're not finding on LinkedIn Recruiter. Like our biggest expense as a boutique recruitment agency is LinkedIn Recruiter by far. We spend a few grand a month just on LinkedIn Recruiter. For the record, our second biggest expense is Loxo. But how does that work in terms of finding different candidates, fishing in a different pond? Is it just scraping the entire internet? I mean, ultimately it does link back to their LinkedIn profile, but how is it finding different candidates than you would find on LinkedIn Recruiter?
Yeah. I'll answer that question before you get into it. I like the fact that it's like when you're not fishing in the same pond. And this is what we always tell our customers, like, source is phenomenal, but I would still say keep LinkedIn Recruiter Lite, keep LinkedIn
Sure.
Sales Now, like keep that license, because you're never going to find the one perfect fits all sourcing tool. As for the like what fuels Loxo Source is, we have partnered with countless data providers. We have our own data, and it's for that exact purpose of like a lot of people you can't find on LinkedIn, or they're not active on LinkedIn. Like go look at healthcare, for example. It's like 70% of healthcare providers don't have a LinkedIn profile, which makes sense. I mean, if you're a surgeon, what do you really need to do with LinkedIn, so to speak? So yeah, we work with all these different providers. This is part of, what makes Loxo Lox is I can't really divulge too much detail here around like how we do get all that data. We have just proprietary algorithms and everything else, but we're constantly reviewing that because our goal is to have the best data out there for recruiters. And when I say the best data, it's like, okay, well, you can compare us to Zoom Info, Lucia. Well, what's the use case there? Those are built for sales reps. So you're going to get a lot of work email, work cell phone, work related things. But recruiters like, well, I need their personal email. I need to know like what kind of career trajectory are they on? If I want to fill this role, what industries are people typically coming from? Any good companies that we should go in and think to like, if we were hiring for Amazon, let's go find someone from, insert some other similar company to go and pull from similar job titles. So those are all the things that we take into account with Loxo Source, and why I think that it's unique in the sense that it's not just like a database you can go and search for, but it's the intelligent aspect of it. Once you start to plug in, like, here's what I'm searching for within the job, that's where the magic happens. Because we're not just saying, here's a list of 1.2 billion candidates. It's like, I want to find the next project manager for this B2B SaaS company, and then we'll go and match that for you. So it's like, you don't need to look through 1.2 billion people. You probably need to look through 15,000 people to find your best person.
Yeah. And you made another interesting point there. 70% of healthcare professionals, you said, are not on LinkedIn. So we've kind of fallen into legal recruiting in the last couple of years. And it's been a bit of a harsh lesson. Yes, these folks are on LinkedIn, but they do not check their LinkedIn messages. So, it's interesting. Like the way that I learned how to recruit, I started back in 2012. All I did was cold call people. I just picked up the phone and called and called and called and called. And now, like, this new generation or this next generation of recruiters is like so dependent on technology and just like sending an in-mail or an email and just like sitting back and waiting for them to schedule a call with you. So since we've gone to Loxo Source, and like, of course we have Apollo and we have Zoom Info, we have all that type of stuff, but if we can find their contact info on the fly and just pick up the phone and call them, or we have their personal email address, it kind of changes the game. It's back to that like old school mentality. And I can tell you our success rate in recruiting attorneys has gone up 10x just from taking that type of approach.
I love that. And that's probably because, as you say, you're also not using the same crowded communication mechanisms as everyone else. You're figuring out for attorneys, what is the best way to reach them? When should I best be reaching them? Because a LinkedIn DM probably isn't the same as sending a text to their phone at 8 p.m. when they're finally out of the office, winding down for the night. They're out of there. So those are the different things where we just say you shouldn't be using just one data source, just one mechanism to communicate, but let's give you everything that you could possibly need. And then that's where you as a recruiter come into play. Your niche best. Like,
right.
What's the medium? What's the message? How do you get that to them? That's where you come into play. We can do that. You could automate it, but you're going to be 10x more successful if you apply your knowledge to it.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of technology, I want to talk about drip campaigns. And honestly, off the top of my head, I'm not sure if that's what you guys refer to them as, but I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Obviously, technology has evolved across our industry, but some of these campaigns are so painfully obvious that it's part of a mass outreach campaign. And I get a ton of these on a daily basis now, and it's just laughable. But what is your advice to salespeople or recruiters doing outreach, like on this subject in general? Like, how do you really differentiate yourself and use these types of technologies most effectively?
Yeah. In today's day, it's stop pitching and start giving value. And I know that's really easy to say, a lot harder to put into practice. So most drip campaign practices today start with step one. You're pitching yourself, you're pitching your product, you're pitching your service. And then the 3 following steps are some variation of like, just bumping this up in your inbox. Let me know if this is of interest. Here's a link to my Calendly to schedule a time. And it's all with this assumption that they want to talk to you, right? Like they don't know you. They don't know what you do. They don't know the value you can provide. You're expecting that they go do this research versus you proactively doing that. So how people buy today is very different. So my recommendation is like, well, to unpack that for a second, people want to know who they're starting to work with. Are you trustworthy? Are you actually good at what you do? And so this is where my favorite part of the services provider is like, you are the product at the end of the day. So how do
Right.
you proactively get that in front of them? So I say create a drip campaign that educates and adds value to them, especially if they didn't explicitly like opt in to receive this message from you. So on the sales side of it, you could do things like, what are some trends that you're seeing related to the skills of top performers that they would typically be hiring? What types of impact do different seniority levels make within an organization like them? How do you identify when you should use automation with your recruiting versus when to add a new hire to solve a specific job problem? And I know this last one seems like contradictory. It's like, hey, I'm trying to get them to hire someone here, but what it does is actually creates more trust with you because you're there to say like, look, I'm a trusted partner. I want to help you do what's best for your organization. And I understand that sometimes there are ways where you can automate versus adding heads, but the fact that I can recognize this, like I want to recommend what is best for you all. And this is what's going to put you at the top of their list because now Ryan's going to stand out all of a sudden as like, oh yeah, I did talk to a recruiter one time and they weren't pitching me, but like they were talking about this different stuff that was different. So you're just going to mentally be at the top of their list. So that's one thing that I really like to think about. And then for candidates, like share how they should be thinking about their career. What are marketplace trends for salaries or benefits related to their title, their career track? What are the impact stories of similar people that you've placed doing amazing things at their new companies? So again, these are people that you might not be working for a job now, but if you are truly a recruiter that like wants to create this like top 1% database, you have to create those relationships well in advance. So when you do have something good, it's not a shot in the dark, but like, hey, Ryan, I know you're really interested in this type of role. I've been thinking about it and I have a company that I actually really think you should look at. That lands a lot differently because you already have the trust, the credibility with them. They're going to read it versus just like, who's this Ryan dude that's hitting up my DMs again? If some other, I have an
Right.
opportunity at Stealth Company. Are you interested? It's like, dude, I don't know you. So yeah, I mean, those are a couple ways that I'd think about it.
Yeah. Would you say then essentially your first outreach message, you're not going in for the kill at all? It's really just providing that value or that information, and then you kind of hit them on the next one after you've established a little bit of credibility.
Exactly. I wouldn't even say on the next one, but people are smart. They know that you have a product to sell, a service
Of
to pitch,
course.
something like that. Like they're going to go and look at Cruit Group after this. They're going to figure out
Right.
what you do. But just that small, subtle difference, like that's enough to make you stand out right now because it's going to be a breath of fresh air for them. They're so used to just being pounded over the head with these pitches where it's like, I get annoyed now. I got 3 calls this morning within a 15-minute window from numbers that I don't know. It was at like 9:10. And I know like BDRs start hitting the phone at 9 o'clock. I'm not going to get mad at the BDR calling, but they're all doing the same playbook over and over and over. And I know exactly what's going to come from that phone call versus if one of the BDRs had a creative way to reach out to me. They sent me a note in the mail. They sent me an email that just resonated and helped. And then they said, hey man, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow at 9:45 Eastern from a number, an area code that starts with 123. I'm going to answer that call most likely. So just little things like that. They go such a long way that 99% of the people aren't doing that. They're just going through the motions over and over. So if you can stand out, you're going to get 100x return on that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Speaking of standing out, so I've been at this for a while, and frankly speaking, probably 90% of my business or job orders, right? Like I'm mainly on the sales side at this point in my career, come from referrals or comes from past relationships. Like to me, relationships are everything in the recruiting industry, especially on the agency side. What would your advice be to someone who's just stepping into sales in the industry and they're looking to obtain new customers? Like you're saying, everyone seems to be doing the same shit out there, right? How do they differentiate themselves from probably one of the most competitive industries out there?
Yeah. This is where I like to talk about the word best practices. Learn best practices. But the funny thing about best practices, by the time something becomes best practice, that's the average of what everyone is doing, right? So everyone is following that best practice, which means it's actually not best practice anymore if you think about it, because you're just going to blend in. It's just Inception mind, you know what. So you want to obtain new customers. So yeah, we spoke about already. I will say time and again, always give value, always lead with value. You are what you're selling ultimately. So what do you know that can benefit the end user? So the more simplified way of thinking about this and what I did at our agency was we used to say things that are super obvious to you are not to 80% of the other people. So share that knowledge, share that insight. So how do you then proactively do this? Like you can't give I mean, I guess you could probably give a demo of yourself, record a video of you like doing a search on your website, but you probably don't want to do that. But your knowledge is what people are buying at the end of the day. So how do you share your learnings? How do you share your insights? And then match that, what we were saying earlier, understand the medium, understand the communication method to get that to the people. Where do they spend time? Are they on Facebook? Are they not on Facebook? Are they on TikTok? Are they on Reddit? Like go find those areas, get involved in the conversations. And then one step further that I really like is, so you work with a ton of, as you said, like in the legal recruitment space, find and take questions that you're getting asked constantly from candidates, from hiring managers, problems that they're facing. These all make amazing content for you. Just anonymize it. Don't use their names. Don't use like any data that, you know, obviously is confidential, but I guarantee you multiple companies are struggling with that same exact thing, or they will be in the future. And they're going to know, oh, Ryan talks about this. He's solved for this before. That's what you want to do is the sales rep when you create new customers. That's the way where it's like before they have a problem, instead of going and being like, well, I need a legal recruiter, go to Google, best legal recruiter in the US. Like they just go like, no, like Cruit Group, CruitGroup.com. Like that's where I'm going to go. You know, that's how you get ahead. And that's what you can do. And it takes time to build that trust and authority. But when it does, that snowball, it's momentum that is really, really hard to stop.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And you kind of just gave me a perfect layup for a segue here. And this is not something I told you I wanted to ask you about, but so throwing you a little bit of a curveball, I like to go off the cuff a little bit, but you mentioned content creation. I'm a big believer in this, but I noticed you're kind of like a LinkedIn influencer, man. You've got 28,000 followers on LinkedIn. not to embarrass you, but you're getting a little rosy cheeked over there, Sam. But talk to me about content creation strategy and how important that is nowadays.
In the services space, I think it's the next way of doing biz dev. It's proactive biz dev, so to speak. You're not there when someone finally has a need, and then you're fighting over like, how do I rank as high as possible to make sure that they pick me? But there was a study, I'm totally blanking on the consulting group that did it. It was like one of the big four. And they basically did this analysis where when people finally have a need, they need to buy a product, they need to buy a service, they have a mental list in their head of 4 to 5 vendors that they're going to research. They're probably going to open up RFPs or expand the search later on. But when they finally make a decision, 90% of the time they go with an organization that was on that first list. So what content creation is doing for you is it's getting you on that first list. So you can, one of my colleagues at a former organization, I love this quote. He said, win before Google. This is what this is letting you do, where like they don't even need to go to Google before this. They know like, I'm going to go to Ryan anytime I need help with these type of recruiting. That's what you want to do. And that's what content creation is doing for you. It's biz dev at scale and proactively. Like if you expect to go in, I'm going to post 5 videos this week, where are all the leads at after week 1, that it doesn't work that way. It takes time to build up, because again, most of these people, like they might not need to recruit for this role right now. They might be starting a company in 6 months and they'll maybe use you then. But it's that's why I keep using the snowball analogy. It's like, you've got to start with a little snowball before it turns into that monster avalanche that gets down the mountain. And that's what you have to start doing. So it's this accretive motion that is going to allow you to have future pipeline, future opportunities that just come into you. So you don't have to go into DMs and being like, hey, do you need a recruiter? I've got this great opportunity for you or something. But like, they're just going to come to you because they know like you are the person, you are the go-to. You've shown your expertise. You've proven you can do it. It's a no-brainer for them at that point. And honestly, people don't like to have to research beforehand and do this comparison of like, do I go with Ryan? Do I go with Joe? Do I go with Jane? Do I go with Sarah? It's mental energy they don't want to use. If you've already proven that you're one of the best at this, cool. Sure. You've just bypassed like half their time that they don't want to be spent doing this.
Yeah. So it's kind of like one of those things where you're getting yourself out there, you're providing value, as you would say, free advice, whatever it is. You know, you're top of mind for these individuals subconsciously when they have a need, right? Is that, would you say that's
Yeah.
accurate?
I mean, that's a simplified version of it. Yeah.
What about consistency? Are you one of those people that like has a content calendar where you're like, oh, I need to post every single day at this time? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a tough part, right? I don't personally have a content calendar. A lot of my stuff, and this is like to what I was saying earlier, like questions, problems that come up. Like I posted today, and it was from a conversation I had 15 minutes before I sent that post out.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I learn. It's like, oh, this one person asked this question, but I bet a lot of other people are thinking this, are
Yes.
trying to solve for it. So the way that I think about it is everyone's different. The biggest thing you want to do is make it a habit. Now, what defines a habit? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it whatever? And that's where you want to find what works for you. You're going to see some people out there posting once a day. You're going to see some people out there posting twice a day. I post 3 times a week max usually, unless I get something off the cuff. I'm like, this really needs to go out today. Mostly just because it's like, that's what's manageable for me. That's what keeps it fun for me. If I try to do it every day, I'm going to burn out on it and then I'm going to stop doing it. That's how you break a habit. So I find like, okay, let's make a habit of it. Like twice a week, let's post about marketing. Let's post about recruiting. Let's talk about something there. And then once a week, let's do something that's just like fun that I enjoy. I enjoy writing. It helps me learn by teaching. And so every Friday I share a post about just like health, anything related to health, physical health, mental health, something else. But what's been really funny about that is I've actually had better conversations and gotten to know prospects and potential clients down the line at a much deeper level because they come in through that content. They're like, oh, cool. Like I'm also interested in this. Or like just genuine conversations happen there that turn into things in the future, which I had zero intent on using it that way. And I still don't use it that way. But when people get to relate to you on that personal level too, and see like, oh, Sam's just not this like marketing robot, but he's a person and he also experiences things. Like that's where I found like balance a way of doing it that the volume isn't overwhelming, but also doesn't just like make you want to rip your eyeballs out talking about this like business stuff all the time.
Yeah, no, I like that, man. And I just feel like a lot of businesses or small businesses especially are kind of missing the boat. I mean, it's free, right? Like you're getting your reach capabilities on LinkedIn specifically, or even TikTok. You know, I'm an old millennial, but I'm trying to get more into like chopping this video up and putting it on TikTok and this and that. But the amount of reach you can get for free it's astonishing. It's it's really just mind blowing how many people you can get in front of for free nowadays.
Yeah, and there's always the mercy of the algorithm, so to speak. But that's what I say. It's like if you look at it as a slow, long journey, like you mentioned, I've got a couple like tens of thousands of followers. And I say that not as like a brag, but like 5 years ago, I had no one. And this isn't an overnight type thing. And I don't intentionally push things like what's going to get the most likes and people to follow me. Because again, I'll burn out if I try to make content for other people specifically. But it's just doing that over time, connecting with people, adding value. Like they're going to want to follow you. But that's the other part of it with the algorithm is you have to make sure you have followers who will see the content that you share. Because otherwise it's like, just because you put it out there, it's not Field of Dreams. Just because you build it, they will come. Like you have to have followers that can see the message. And that's where the thought leader ads on LinkedIn come in to help. They can amplify personal posts if you have a company that's willing to sponsor it. So if you have great advice around recruiting, I would say like have your company sponsor that. Put a couple $100 behind it. You're going to get a couple thousand, tens of thousands of impressions that you can say, I only want to show up to our core like buyers, prospects. And that's a good way to make sure that your content's getting in front of the right people.
Yeah, super interesting. Last question on content. Do you have any advice for people that are maybe self-conscious about putting themselves out there, or they just feel like, you know, maybe it's a little cringy to do that in the professional world?
Yeah, I mean, I was there. That was me. I was like, the only people that follow me on LinkedIn when I got started, like my mom, like people I went to college with, people I went to high school with. I'm like, what do they care about marketing stuff? And then I thought about myself and I was like, okay, well, I enjoy writing because that's how I learn. And we also had a CEO, Chris Walker, who did this, and he led by example. And it was really cool to see like what happens if you do this well and the community that it can build. So part of it, I think, is if you have a culture that enables this and promotes this and like is very open and makes people want to do it. It's not forced upon anyone, but just say like, lead by example with it. It's going to make other people on your team want to do it because they can kind of see the success that I say success. But just like what can come from it for the company, for themselves. But yeah, getting over the cringy part, it's like, who's it cringy to? Is it cringy to your high school friend who like you don't really keep in touch with anymore and you don't care? Or are you using this to genuinely like try to meet new people, to help people solve problems?
Right.
And I think this is one that I latch onto most is I'm like, I don't care if my high school friend that I haven't talked to in 15 years like doesn't like this post. I just helped 5 marketers learn this skill that took me months and hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure out. Like I want to share that advice and help people.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right perspective. I get razzed by a lot of my boys that I grew up with that I still keep in touch with. That,
Hmm.
they're like, "Oh, Levy, the LinkedIn influencer or whatever," and I frankly don't care what anyone thinks. I've seen value just from creating content consistently, and
Hmm.
last month picked up a new customer from someone that had been engaging in with a lot of my posts, and someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a former client in a way in Chicago, and finally went in for the kill one day, and she gave me the opportunity, and we filled the job for her. So
Yeah.
I certainly see the value in it, and I'm continuing to push that with my team. I think it's just you got to get over yourself and not care what other people think. I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing.
Yeah, and if they're friends, it's like they're giving you a hard time because it's like they're friends. It's an easy, fun thing to poke at, right? But at the end of the day, it's
Right.
like I've also had conversations with those friends. They're like, "Hey, we're trying to grow out like our marketing function. Can you talk to our CEO about this?" Like they do appreciate what you do with it, and if they continue to give you a hard time and all that, it's like, should they be a friend? But that's a conversation for a different podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. B2B marketing or sales in general, in your eyes, what would you say the keys to success are? I know that's a big, deep question, but in general.
So actually, this goes back to I think that post that I was talking about this morning, where I was like having a conversation with someone, and I shared it out, but I really don't think it's never like the sexy new thing. It's not the fancy, expensive tech. It's doing the fundamentals well and consistently. And this is general life advice. It applies to health, it applies to business, it applies to relationships. So for marketing, so to speak, it's like you can go and buy a 6-figure SaaS platform that's gonna put ads in front of the right people magically and get them to turn into buyers, but the reality is it doesn't work as easily as they sell. Like that's what a seller's job is to do, right?
Sure.
So the what are the fundamentals for marketing? It's having very tight targeting criteria. So what do I mean by that? Know your exact buyers. So not just I can sell to any legal professional, but I want to focus on IT lawyers in the Northeast region of the United States that work for companies that are 5,000 plus employees. That's a
Okay.
level of granularity that I'm talking about, because what you then do is you want to have a distinct point of view and messaging that is refreshed regularly, but you word it in different ways that all reinforce this point of view. And you're just hitting them over the head with this, with your content, with ads, with anything else. So they always know it's like, okay, this is what you do, this is what you solve for, and this is how you do it differently than everyone else. And you're doing that where they spend time. So you just said earlier, it's like not a lot of lawyers are on LinkedIn. Well, where are they spending their time? Figure out how to get all of that incorporated there. If it's on Twitter, if it's on Reddit, if it's in a local Facebook group that they all spend time in, it's finding ways to get into there, and then doing it in a way that we were talking about earlier through value adding content, not like pitching what you do.
Sure. Yeah. Speaking of target market, I think I shared this with you, but I like watching TV at night. Like that's my thing to wind down, just a couple hours, whatever, Netflix
Hmm.
binge. But in our bedroom, we have a Samsung television, and I don't know how this works, but when I turn on the television before I go to YouTube TV or Netflix or whatever, Samsung has like these free television channels. And there's a lot of like random cooking shows and channels and stuff like that, and like I'll watch it, I just get sucked in for like 10 minutes, whatever. There's a cooking one, there's a travel one, and it's a free television network, I guess. I don't know, I don't pay for these channels, but there's a ton of them. It's actually quite interesting. And I don't know, a couple months ago, I'm laying in bed watching one of these cooking shows, and I got a TV ad for Loxo. And I felt like this ad was speaking to me. I mean, granted, I'm already a Loxo customer, but it was like these Martians, and like I think they were driving in a car or something, and
Hmm.
I was just totally blown away that I got an ad for recruiting software essentially. And I don't know. I just wanted to share that because I thought it was so cool that like somehow the TV knew or targeted me with an ad for something that was like totally relevant. Can
Yeah,
you
that was
talk to that a little
intentional.
bit?
Yeah, that was fully intentional. So one, we marketers have way too many creepy tools at our disposal. Don't ever
Yeah.
count us out on that. But that's the power of knowing like exactly who we want to target. So I have a list of very specific people that I want to get messaging in front of. You're one of them. And so from
Right.
there, I then know it's like, okay, if this messaging is only going to these people, and then it's like, okay, where do they show up? They're on LinkedIn. I'm like, everyone watches TV. Like you just said, wind down a couple hours at night. Some people start their day off with it. I'm like, our competitors aren't doing that. This is a good, unique way for us to stand out right now. We have all the leverage there. We're going to be the first to that space. But I also don't want to just show up with some crappy TV ad that looks like it was shot on an iPhone. I'm like, if we're going to do this, we
Yeah.
have to do it properly. And so we thought up this whole concept, like what's a fun way where you have 30 seconds, 15 seconds to really get a message across, which is like find and place the hardest to reach candidates. But it's like, okay, like aliens, Bigfoot, like these people you can never find, right? It's like, and then we have this character. It's just like, or I can just use Loxa to find the alien. I've already got them set up for an interview tomorrow. While this like husband character is like using this like Galaxar tracking like thing to look all complicated. But yeah, it's that whole thing where it's like we took a fun tongue-in-cheek approach to something that you all struggle with, did it in a way that's humorous, entertaining, and memorable, and then a place that like you scroll through LinkedIn feed, you get ad after ad after ad, it all blends together. But on a TV, you're like, that stands out. So that's what we
Yeah.
were doing there. Excuse me. And that's the power of very tight targeting with messaging we know is super relevant to them and in a medium in a place where we know that they're spending time. And that's the impact that can come out of it.
Yeah, I was blown away, man. So props to you guys for
Thank
that
you.
one because
Yeah,
I
it
thought that
was
was
a
super
fun
cool.
one. We had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, love it. I know we're almost out of time here, but what's next for Sam Keenly? What's next for Loxo?
Oh man, what's next for us? Continuous education and innovation. That's the fun part is like we kind of get to figure out what do we want to do, what are we building with the product and everything else. So I know the team's been working on a lot of really cool stuff, impactful stuff. And so right now it's just we're trying to get more people aware of who we are and understanding like Matt's point of view is the ATS is going to be dead in 3 years. And I know it's like a very like cold calling's dead. People are, used to that type of thing. But we say it in the sense that like the way that recruiters work is evolving. That's exactly what a talent intelligence platform is. So like the ATS on its own island is probably going to start losing its power, but as part of a talent intelligence platform, you're always going to need an ATS at the end of the day. But that's like our unique point of view. The ATS is going to be dying. Here's what you need to do to get ahead. Here's all of the tools. Here's what we can do to help you learn, to grow. And so that's a mission that we're on for the next couple of years is just how do we build the very best product out there so that as many recruiters as possible can use it, making sure that it's, like you said earlier, it's like it's simple, it's intuitive, it's helpful to use. And it's never going to be the silver bullet that fixes everything. Like you're still going to probably need some level of LinkedIn. You're still going to need to do the other fundamentals that make you as good of a recruiter as you are, but it's going to drastically improve just your efficiency, your cost effectiveness.
Right.
I've done these different analyses on just like if you have 10 plus tools versus you use Loxo and a couple others, and it's like $7,000 annual versus per recruiter versus like $70,000. It's absolutely wild. So things like that, like it's never going to be this like perfect silver bullet, as I said, but that's what we're working on. It's all possible. It's just never been done before. So we have to help people understand what it is, why it's different, and then the change management aspect of it. It's very different from what they've done before. So it's perceived as a little bit risky if they're not an early adopter, tech savvy, or like we said earlier, it's like recruiting tech is always 5-10 years behind. So how do we help just pull them along in this journey in a way that's helpful for them still?
Yeah, no, I love that, man. It's exciting stuff, and I can't wait to see where you guys take the product.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks to people like you, that's what we get to do. So yeah, always love any feedback and insights.
Awesome, man. Well, really appreciate your time. It's been a fun episode. Any closing thoughts you want to get out there to the people?
Just check us out. Head over to the website. I share stuff on LinkedIn, like you were saying. Yeah, we've got some fun commercials if you want to find those on YouTube and everything else. But yeah, we're just trying to help recruiters do the best that they can every day. I know that it's already one of the hardest jobs out there, is just getting constant rejection and everything else. So,
Right.
So anything we can do to add smile and value to the day is what we're after.
Cool. Well, and make sure you guys check out Become a Hiring Machine podcast on all podcast platforms as well. If you're a recruiter, I can't recommend it enough. Tons of great insight on there. But Sam, thank you again for your time. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to continuing the professional relationship, my friend.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
All right.